Hey gamers, welcome to the Kind of Funny Gamescast for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. I am Andy Cortez, and I'm joined by the Koji Pro, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Good day, Andy.
Good day, Blessing. Feels like yesterday.
It feels like yesterday indeed, because we're recording this yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Each and every weekday we get together to talk about the biggest previews, reviews, and topics in video games live on YouTube, Twitch, and podcast services around the globe. If you love what we do, support us with the Kind of Funny membership on Patreon, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts to get all of our shows ad-free, watch us record them live, and get a daily exclusive show. For a chance to be a part of the show, submit your thoughts and opinions and super chats as we go. You could still do that here, but this one has a big pre-recorded element to it, so we won't be able to read them live. I'm sorry, apologies there. But you can also maybe send in super chats for the following day. I'll let them know. If
Well, here's the deal.
Give us a real obscure message and hope that they can guess what it's
the following day, I believe, is also
pre-recorded.
Damn.
But here's the thing. On Monday, the plan is to do a Death Stranding 2 all of your questions answered
Wow.
podcast.
That's
preview
massive.
podcast. So if you have any big questions coming out of this preview, write them in on Monday, and we'll be able to talk all about them.
Massive. Housekeeping, remember, Greg is rocking PAX East Thursday, and you need to be a part of it. That's today.
That's today.
Yeah, that is today. At 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Greg's the keynote speaker kicking off PAX East, and we'll be doing a fireside chat with Final Fantasy and Expedition 33's Benjamin Starr. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time, he is hosting the Mafia, the Old Country panel with the devs.
And both of those things, by the time this comes out, have already happened.
There you can go back and watch the VODs.
Go back and watch them, everybody. You're about to witness history this Friday. Tomorrow, Snowbike Mike, the most athletic man in his own mind, is embarking on the most daring quest yet, going step for step with Sam Porter Bridges in a literal marathon stream on a treadmill. Join Roger and Mike this Friday as they attempt to do a full playthrough of Death Stranding 1 through the weekend, but they can only do it with your support. Will Mike and Roger break this treadmill and have to drive to Andy's home at 1 a.m. to borrow his? Find out Friday on Twitch. I also got a random text from Roger saying, hey, that 4 or 5 year old box of beanless chili, can you bring it to the studio? I might bring a couple of cans or so, but I'm not going to blow my beanless chili load on a stream. Like, I'm sorry. These things they're artifacts at this point, Blessing.
But they've just been sitting there the whole time, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, they're collecting legacy.
They're collecting legacy.
Yeah.
These beans?
They're collecting dust and legacy, you know? Remember, we're an 11-person business, all about live talk shows. Today, you already got Games Daily, and that was about something cool. I don't know what it was, but maybe they delayed GTA 6 again.
Oh,
Who knows?
no.
After Gamescast is a sponsored stream where I'm going to be sitting here, and we're playing that old Imperial game. I'm going to be playing with Snowbike Mike and Nick Scarpino. We're going to be playing through that for quite a while, so that'll be a nice little sponsored stream. Hope you all tune in for that. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Carl Jacobs, Omega Buster, and Delaney Twining. Today we're brought to you by Imperial and Aura Frames and BetterHelp, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with what is the topic of the show. Bless, you're gallivanting out there in Japan. You got to visit Kojima Productions and got to play a decent chunk of Death Stranding 2.
I got to play up to 40% of Death Stranding 2. So I was in Tokyo for a week at Kojima Productions for about 4 days, essentially full-time playing Death Stranding 2. They allowed us to play up to 30 hours of the game. I actually don't know where my final hour count is. I think technically on my demo station, it must have hit at least 30 hours, but we were getting lunches,
Can
right?
I go pee? No. Finish this
You
level.
sit there and you play the fucking
You
game.
beat this boss.
No, but obviously, there's times where I'm taking breaks. There's times where at a certain point, me, Dane Ryckert, and Skill Up went off to record a little preview conversation that you're gonna hear later in the show, because that is the second half to this episode, right? So this is gonna be chopped up into 2 chunks. This first chunk is gonna be me setting the stage for my own personal preview of Death Stranding 2 and giving context for what you're going to get later, which is, me, Skill Up, and Dan Ryckert talking all about our experiences with the game, because for this kind of preview, which is unlike any other preview that I've experienced, and unlike most other previews that I've ever heard of, right? Playing up to 30 hours of a video game this early in a preview fashion is fucking bizarre. And I figured it'd be really cool to have a conversation with other people who got that experience as well, so that we can break down, we can get into the meat of it. Because between the three of us, that's about 70 to 90 hours of gameplay, depending on where we land, as far as how far we made it into the game.
And if this is your first time listening to gaming podcasts, or if you're just kind of interested in Kojima video games as a whole, the way previews usually work is you either play something at home locally, or you fly out somewhere and you'll play something for anywhere from 2 to 5 hours.
Yep.
My Dragon Age Veilguard preview was, I believe, a 5 to 6 hour-ish preview as well. But what they do is they say, let's drop you in the beginning, where you kind of like, getting your feet wet, and then feet wet.
Yeah, you're getting your feet wet. Yeah.
Good.
That's correct. Yeah.
Good. Get them feet wet.
I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
It's like
test
a
out the
pool.
waters. Test out the waters.
Yeah, test
you
out
know
the
what I mean?
water so you can get your feet wet.
And
yeah.
then we'll fast forward you to a different section of the game where you're a bit more geared up, and then we'll show you what it feels like to be level 50 in the game with all this other gear, so you can get a kind of total representation of what your experience could be when the final product comes out. And this time they said, what if you just played 30-something hours, which is incredible. And again, I agree with you, super odd. Really, really odd.
Super
really cool,
odd.
though.
This was one of the coolest / weirdest preview events I got to take a part of. So, like I mentioned, up to 30 hours, right? There isn't that many restrictions around what we can talk about. Like, we can talk about story stuff. We can talk about like all the items, tools, upgrade systems. Like the only restrictions they gave us were like 3 story moments. We can't talk about licensed music, and we can't talk about like the preppers in the game that deliver missions and like who appears and stuff like that. Outside of that, they're pretty open as far as like, talk about whatever you want, which there's a deeper conversation there as far as like, you guys are very, very forthcoming with allowing us to talk about the game, which makes me wonder what's in the second half of the game, because so much of what we played appeared in the trailers that we've seen for Death Stranding 2 as well.
Gotcha.
So I'm very fascinated about the back half of this game, but obviously this conversation isn't about the back half. We're talking about that first 40% of the game that I got to play.
And you know what a lot of the conversation is that you had with Dan Ryckert and Skill Up that you'll be seeing after when we get to our ads or whatever. You know what a good chunk of that conversation is because you were there and you're in the video.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that there's a lot of other stuff that maybe you weren't able to get to in your
Yes.
Death Stranding experience that you'd like to kind of, speak about now.
Exactly. So that's what I want to spend this first about 20 minutes talking about, right? Is the stuff I didn't get to in that conversation with me, Skill Up, and Dan Ryckert.
Tell us all about it, Bless.
Well, one more thing I want to mention too is that they didn't allow they didn't allow phones or laptops or anything electronic at the at the PlayStations.
No shoes.
And so
Only socks.
no shoes, no socks. And so they handed out physical notebooks. And I have about 22 pages of notes
That's awesome.
that I took handwritten while playing this game. The place I want to start off with is one of the final notes I took during my last day of playing, which reads like this. I think this is going to be really hard to beat for Game of the Year. Everything is on point. The story, performances, depth in gameplay, music, fidelity, detail, fun, combat, spirit. This game has it all. One of the things you're going to hear the most in the preview cycle for this game are the words Metal Gear Solid 5.
No! Oh, God, don't do it to me.
Legitimately, that's one of the things you're going to hear the most. I think a lot of people are going to make those comparisons, and I think the important thing is to, I guess, angle those comparisons in the correct way. And of course, me and Skill Up and Dan talk about it as well, where Death Stranding 2 is very much Death Stranding. It's not a different game. It's you are delivering, you are doing all of those systems, but it's filtered through, I think, a lot of the quality, a lot of the depth, a lot of the fun of Metal Gear Solid 5. And I think one of the bigger changes that you see in this game is the combat, where you play Death Stranding 1.
No, of course, yeah.
And
I was part of the OG review crew.
No way.
We were
really?
in the old studio with Fran Mirabella.
No way.
It was a very different time. Yeah.
Well, in Death Stranding 1, you remember encountering those enemy camps that are like the human enemy camps, not the BTs, and that shit sucked. Like you would get there, and it is the thing of, okay, I'm running away from these guys that are
Bolo
chasing
all of
me.
them, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna bolo them. In
Their
Death Stranding
feet.
2, they made a big change where every bullet is a rubber bullet, and so like you are just knocking people out for the most part.
Right.
And they've turned these camps from the frustrating thing of Death Stranding 1 that nobody really wanted to do into essentially like Metal Gear Solid 5. Like you're infiltrating, you're sneaking through, you're taking people out with guns. You're basically Solid Snake in these camps now. And so it went from me kind of being like, kind of dreading it a bit, to now I'm excited to encounter a human enemy camp because they've provided you with so many tools. They provided you with different kinds of weapons. And one of the first things I do as I'm approaching a camp is I will either create a tower with my PCC, which is like the thing you use to build things in Death Stranding, or usually somebody else on the network has already built one for me. And so I'll hop into that and mark every enemy. And then I'll go.
Oh, so it's the same device that you use to make a bridge or
Yes.
a whatever.
Yeah,
anything in the game.
Yeah, anything
Okay.
in the game, any of the big structures in the game.
Gotcha.
You can use to make a watchtower, and then if you use it, it'll give you this tower view over an enemy camp. It automatically marks people. You don't even have to mark people yourself if you're using that tower. You can if you're like on a high ledge or something, and you're just scoping in. If you want to tag people one at a time, you have that option. But what I did was, I went to a watchtower, tagged everybody, went down, snuck in, and I would I'm mainly sniping them. I'm mainly going in because, at a certain mission, I found a sniper that was a non-lethal sniper, and I'm like, let's fucking go. I can pick people off one by one, and then as soon as somebody sees me, it is machine gun them down with my rubber bullets, and then get whatever package or objective that I was trying to do.
And why can't you kill them?
Because that'll cause a void out. If you remember Death Stranding 1, killing people is very dangerous because the whole area will explode.
It's basically a big ass nuclear bomb that just kind of goes off, creates a giant ass crater.
Exactly. So the combat feels very improved from Death Stranding 1, but even beyond that, right? And talking about the MGS5 of it all, the sandbox gameplay feels expanded. There's more tools, there's more weather systems that are really cool. This game has a day-night cycle, which I forgot that Death Stranding 1 didn't have. There are sandstorms. When it rains, the tide will rise in the rivers or lower or rise. One of the first things that happened in my playthrough, as I'm making my way walking toward the first destination, is there was a gate quake, which are essentially what they call earthquakes in the game. And the earth shook, and then a piece of the mountain that I was on crumbles down in front of me in real time, and that shit looked fucking cool.
Whoa.
Yeah, that shit looked really cool.
It's similar to seeing how in that most recent long ass trailer, the Kojima 10-minute one, where we saw the avalanche and
Yes.
the water breaking through the dam. It seems like they're going real deep with details like that.
Exactly. And so much of it feels, I think, finely tuned based off of what Death Stranding 1 is a game, right? What one is as a game, which is walking around these beautiful environments, delivering packages, right? Everything about Death Stranding 2 feels tuned towards making that experience more engaging and more fun and more interesting. So you have those weather effects.
Real quick, just to get back to the infiltration portion of it, were you ever at odds with having too much shit on your back and carrying too many things? And did you ever wrestle with, man, I want to infiltrate to see what's up with this little enemy encampment, but I have 12 fucking Amazon boxes on my back. How do I, were you ever at odds of maybe I should go deliver things first before I come back here?
A lot of the missions that I ended up having, I wouldn't necessarily need to go. Oftentimes, if I'm infiltrating, it's because I need to get something out of there.
Okay.
So it's usually I'll take people out and then grab what I need and then get out of there. Or if I have a bunch of shit that I'm carrying, I either go around or sometimes I'll just drop them off. The vehicles aren't hard to come by once you get far enough into the game, and so quite a few times I would just stack everything in the vehicle and then go take out everybody in the camp and then come back and get my vehicle.
Gotcha.
And then do my thing. And so there's strategies around it. We got to do a group interview with Kojima as well, and that was one of the questions that he tackled was around the camps and stuff. And he mentioned that he would watch people play and he would be surprised that more people just don't drop their shit and then do the camps. A lot of people apparently while play testing would just straight up take their shit into the camps, and Kojima's oh, that's not what I anticipated, but all right, cool. Play how you want to, kind of thing.
Were you using a lot of different vehicles? And what, because
Yes.
we've seen a lot of different variety with that little paddle boat that he's got. We've seen the motorcycle and little trikes or whatever.
Yep.
What sort of things were you using in the game?
A lot of trikes, a lot of larger vehicles. The game has a lot more paths through upgrading yourself and upgrading vehicles and stuff. So there was one vehicle, how when you go into one of the structures and you can look at what other people have in the garage and kind of take their vehicle because everything is shared socially in the game. I was surprised when I found certain vehicles where I'm driving through and it has a little auto turret in the thing, and then also a little thing to automatically grab packages. And so I'm driving in this big truck and I'm seeing packages on the ground, which of course you can pick up to then finish whoever's delivery who dropped the package. And I'm just automatically picking that shit up, and it made life really easy for me.
Hell yeah.
But keeping it top level, because one of the things I want to mention too is the fact that this is one of the rare Kojima direct sequels, if you know what I mean. So like, to explain that further, when I talk about Metal Gear Solid, for example, Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 is obviously the same franchise, same series, but very like different as far as the jump of you are now playing as Raiden. You are, like kind of have a different feel of what a very different story from Metal Gear Solid 1. You hop into Metal Gear Solid 3 and you are playing as Naked Snake, you're playing as Big Boss, in a jungle sort of environment, different feel. Metal Gear Solid 4 feels very different from MGS3. Metal Gear Solid 5 feels way different from all the MGS games. Death Stranding 2, in the first 30 hours or so of playing, feels very much like a direct sequel to Death Stranding 1 in a way that I think has allowed Kojima Productions to really go very iterative as far as how you're making this game better. And I think it's way to its benefit. Again, that's not to say that something crazy doesn't happen in the second half, because I don't know, and I'm still kind of expecting that. But all the things that I'm talking about here, as far as what they've added into Death Stranding 2, they feel like direct answers and reactions to what people might have wanted post Death Stranding 1. So like, I made like a list, and I read this list on the conversation with Skillup and Dan, so I'm going to repeat this, right? But like, when you're talking about the ways that this game feels reactive to all the criticisms of Death Stranding 1, right? The combat is fun and engaging this time around. It gets you into the game quicker. Like there wasn't like long ass cutscenes to start this thing, right? Like immediately they're like, all right, here's a few shots of the environment to like set the tone, and now like you are walking to your first mission. There's more dynamic weather and obstacles going on, like I talked about. There's more tools and upgrade systems. The story feels easier to follow and more interesting. And I think that's the balance of shit is still weird. They're still working off of all the rules and everything set up in Death Stranding 1. However, one of the things they've added here is a glossary system that works kind of like active time lore from Final Fantasy 16.
Awesome.
Where as soon as they mention anything weird, there's a button prompt that's like, do you want to read
what are dooms?
Yeah, no, legitimately.
That's awesome.
What is dooms? What is the chiral network?
Yes.
Like what are BTs? What's a BB? Like a lot of these things are from Death Stranding 1, but
That rocks.
in case you've forgotten anything, here is a glossary that is letting you know in real time as they're mentioned in the cutscenes. The game is more beautiful. That was the first thing I noticed as I started the game up, is like it starts off, like I mentioned, with shots of the environment, and for a split second I thought it was like real.
Raising your hand, Mr. Kojima, is this real?
I legitimately thought, I was like, are these live action? Like, is this footage of actual, like, just shots of America? So like, the game looks fucking fantastic, and we're playing on base PS5s. We're not playing on PlayStation 5 Pros.
Wow.
A couple days ago, we did our reaction to the GTA 6 trailer, and one of the things that we talked about was like, at the end of the trailer, they mentioned like captured on PS5 from like base PS5, and I think either Roger or Mike were like, no way this is captured on base PS5. And for me, in my mind, I'm like, based on what I saw off of Death Stranding 2, I believe it, because the game looks fantastic. The Decima engine is on full display here. The motion capture for the characters looks beautiful. The environments and like seeing the ridges of the mountains from far away and seeing the amount of definition, the amount of crazy lighting shit that I've seen in cutscenes in this game. This game is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen in my life from a visuals perspective. It is
So
absolutely insane. The game is bigger. The soundtrack is better. There's more variety in the BTs and ways to deal with them. This game, I feel like, is the potential fulfillment of everything they wanted to set up in Death Stranding 1. That's kind of where I left that list of things in my notes.
We saw like the 1.5 version with the director's cut.
Yeah.
And I thought was a really awesome move by them to kind of show that, yeah, we kind of recognize that maybe doing a lot of this stuff isn't as fun as it can be. We'll come out with the director's cut, introduce a lot of new new machines and ways of traversing the world, ways of dealing with enemies and things like that.
Yep.
And this sounds like the next logical step in Death Stranding.
Yes, and one of the things that Barrett was just showing was the monorail system, where there are now like these like mines that you can open up, these mine structures that are similar to like the big structures that you'll happen upon to like deliver packages and shit. The mine allows you to like mine materials and stuff, so you can and you can then deliver those materials and yourself and your vehicles or whatever you want to using the monorail system to like the different cities and
That's
different
awesome.
locations and stuff.
One thing I wanted to ask real quick.
Yeah.
When I was reviewing this before it came out, obviously a lot of Death Stranding is the Strand game, the social game. You're you're being helped and you're helping a lot of other people, and you're seeing it was all I've said it a million times. It was always Danny O'Dwyer's shit that I was using because I would always see his stuff pop into the game. I don't know if that was just a location server based thing. I have no idea, but that was such a massive part of it. Obviously, with this preview, it's you and a bunch of other people in the games industry.
Yeah.
How did they tackle that where you're not having a library full of the internet putting up all sorts of bullshit to help you out with the game if it's you and just a bunch of other people, journalists?
They had us playing on base PS5s, like I mentioned. We're all in like a cafeteria. It's 30 different press people that are here for this event. And like the accounts that we're playing off of are like these like accounts made for the preview. Like they're just a random smattering of letters and numbers or whatever.
Okay.
Sadly, I couldn't play off of my own account. I couldn't keep my save, which sucks because like it felt like the final build, even though they did say that like this isn't the final build. We're gonna update more before we ship the game. But if they didn't say that, I would have been like, oh, this is the final game. Like it felt very finished. When I first started playing, it felt like there were like pre-canned like just random names or random like default, I guess, like characters or accounts that would fill in those social, like here's a bridge, here's a a line to drop down, or here's whatever. As I kept playing, I started seeing those random smattering of numbers and letters that looked similar to the account that I was using. So I'm pretty sure those were the other press people.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so like it was a slow build at first, but yeah, I think
things started populating more and more.
Things started populating more
That's
and more.
awesome.
That I was like, oh, this is clearly other people that were here for this event, which is pretty cool.
Did they give off anything that like revealed in any way why we shouldn't have connected was a big theme in the trailer? Because like the connection portion, that may be getting too spoilery, but the connection portion of Death Stranding was we connect, we help each other. This game is very much about, helping out your fellow neighbor or whatever.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of reveals that showed you, oh, this is what they're taking away from us this time around or something?
So this is the shift into the story portion of this, right?
Okay.
Which is the thing that we didn't really get to set it up well during the conversation that we had later in the episode. Regarding the should we have connected thing, one of the things that Kojima talked about during the group interview that we did with him was about like how much the game sort of changed during the pandemic, and like how some of his ideas even changed during the pandemic as far as like connection and how important it is to be in person and have those, like he called them like in real life coincidences of when you hang out with somebody in person versus online, where even though you had that connection, it still feels segmented. There's something, and this is he kind of talked about this being the reason why he wanted to have this like in-person physical event where people fly out for 4 days, is like he wanted people to be in person with each other. He wanted people to like hang out and meet each other and have these coincidences and all this stuff, right? I say all that to say that like I could see there being the, I guess the leaning in of, oh yeah, should we have connected because of that, right? As far as what it means to be in person with each other. There are things that happen in the game that I could see being that, but I feel like for me in the time that I had with the story, I didn't really get the, oh, this is like the exact,
this
like,
is a big mistake, or
yeah, this is a big
antithesis of it
mistake.
all.
I could see us getting there though.
Okay.
Like there are things that are built where I'm like, okay, I could see how this could possibly ramp up. Keeping on the story. So you start off, right? Of course, you're playing as Sam Porter Bridges. One of the first missions has you just like going home after a hike, right? And you get home and you meet up with Fragile. You know Fragile. She's like the leader of the Fragile Express.
But I'm not fragile.
You have a conversation with her. And in that conversation, she says, Sam, I want you to go to Mexico.
Huh.
And then you go to Mexico.
Oh.
That's where the game starts. The game starts with sending you down to Mexico.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and you start off the game by reconnecting Mexico to the chiral network, because so of course in the first game you connect the UCA via the chiral network. It was the whole big thing that you did. Because the chiral network is online, there are now these essentially like AI delivery services. Hold on, there's a name for it. I wrote it down. You have the APAC, the Automated Public Assistance Company, and they produce the APAS 4000, which is the Automated Porter Assistance System. So
They're taking our jobs.
they're taking our jobs. Fragile Express, no more.
Oh,
Yeah, Fragile Express went out of business because
Damn,
you
dude.
have all these automated delivery systems now in the USCA. Guess what, though? You don't have that in other countries. And so you go to Mexico, reconnect Mexico, things happen, and then I'm jumping around because I don't want to spoil actual like cool shit. Things happen that lead you to Australia.
Just a quick hop, skip, and a jump
quick
away.
hop and skip to Australia because there are these things called plate gates that have opened up, which are essentially these ways that you can transport to different continents. The bulk of this game, at least what I played, takes place in Australia.
Whoa.
Mexico kind of works as the prologue, or like a beefy prologue, really. I was there for about 5 hours of game time, and then you then get led to Australia, and Australia is where most of this game takes place.
Wow, I would not have expected that.
Yeah. I don't want to get more into story. I'm sure a lot of other people are going to cover story bits because they do not hold us back in terms of what we can talk about. But like, story shit is cool. What I do want to talk about
I'm just looking at the characters you're writing down. I'm not going to say them, but this is
well, that's the thing is that now I want to get into characters because I think the characters are more fascinating thing here. Where you have Dollman. Dollman, of course, you've seen Dollman in the trailers. He's the puppet.
10 frames per second.
That goes at 10 frames per second. Dollman is fucking awesome. He has a great personality. He functions sort of like Mimir from God of War, where he's just on your waist. He's just hanging out with you the whole time. There's a backstory that explains his existence. That's like 2 sentences, and when they said it, I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." And that's all.
That's awesome.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. No, you explained it.
Say no more.
Yeah, say no more." That's all you need to say. But he's fucking awesome. One of the things that Dan Ryckert told me during his gameplay, because sometimes like he'll talk to you. Dollman will like be on your waist and like give you suggestions or like say little things. Apparently, while Dan Ryckert was playing, Dan was like about to cross a river, and Dollman was like, "Are you sure you want to?" Then like, as his waist went into the water, Dollman starts drowning in the water, and Dan was like, "It was really fucking cool."
That is such a Kojima detail, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's Tarman. Tarman is the pilot of the DHV Magellan, which is a drawbridge ship. Drawbridge is essentially the new Fragile Express, right?
Okay.
It's Fragile's new company that she started. The DHV Magellan basically looks like a head of a Metal Gear.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
what we saw in the trailer.
Yeah, but it's a ship and
The
it's fucking cool.
Sahelanthropus, it looks like.
Exactly. And there's cutscene shit that happens with Tarman that's fucking awesome. I love the character work this time around. It feels like they put in a lot more work into like making these characters feel a bit more like a family, because it has more of a I'm putting together a team vibe.
Okay.
In Death Stranding 2 and then Death Stranding 1. Death Stranding 1 felt like you're kind of like traveling and meeting these people, but then after the chapter's over, you meet the next person. Here, you're building the team of Drawbridge, essentially. You start off meeting them, but then you bring people in as you go.
I mean, I was already sold, you know?
You have Rainy, who is played by Shioli Kutsuna. She has one of my favorite performances in the game. I won't say much about her story, but like her backstory is fucking cool as well. You have Tomorrow, who's played by Elle Fanning. She also has one of my favorite missions in the game, and she's fucking cool as shit. There's Neil, who is the Solid Snake looking character that we've seen in the trailers. He also had one of the coolest moments in the preview. And it was one of the ones that everybody talked about by day 3 of the preview, where everybody's like, "Yo, you get to the Neil stuff. You get to the Neil stuff." It starts off essentially like you are in, you know how when with Mads Mikkelsen in the first game, you have those pocket dimension things that you would go into. You kind of had that with Neil in this game, where you enter and there are just fireworks going off, and like crazy lighting effects happening everywhere, and then Neil shows up and it does the thing where like his face flashes like skull type shit right here. Bear's showing it here. This happens, and then you get into a boss fight with him, and it's the most MGS4 coded boss fight of all time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You then have Charlie, who's a mannequin man, and I won't say much about Charlie. Yeah.
Saw him in the trailer too.
But those
were like the way that the character animated the mouth, like it was drawn on almost.
Yes.
Kind of. Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
That's Charlie. Those are some of the major new characters. Thank you, Bear. This is Charlie. Won't say much about him because I just don't want to say much about him.
Of course.
You know. But Charlie's fucking cool. Other things. So that's just story and characters there. Other things real quick before I pass off the conversation to me, Skill Up, and Dan. There's a music player in this game. I love this music player. I can't talk about what the licensed tracks are, but I will say overall, soundtrack, fucking phenomenal.
Oh, great.
I love the licensed songs. There are some songs that I kept playing back. Like, you can make your own playlist within the game, and there are certain songs where I was like, I'm having this on repeat, man. This
I
is like,
remember calling in Pequod and getting the helicopter.
yeah,
God damn.
it has that feel where it's like, oh man, they really nailed it with
That's so
with the soundtrack. And like the soundtrack only plays if you're within the chiral network, which is some Kojima bullshit. But
Wi-Fi.
actually, yeah, but I like it though. There was a mission where I had to deliver a kangaroo to an animal shelter, and fiery comets started raining from the sky, and the fire effects in this game look insane. Again, I can't say
Sir, is this real?
I can't say enough good shit about the Decima engine, how well this shit runs. I think the BTs are creepier this time around. There are big floating ones called Watchers that creep me the fuck out. But you have a lot more tools to deal with them. There's this blood boomerang that I unlocked.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, partway through the game where basically like you inject this boomerang with your blood and you can throw it and then catch it. And I was like, that became my primary way of dealing with the BTs. Oh, speaking of, sir, is this real? There was a random delivery I was making, right? Where an airship flies over me that I've never seen before and drops a bunch of like men made of tar, essentially, and they attacked me. And like they like ran at me and blew up on me, and I don't know what that was.
Was it like the hands that grab your feet?
Yes.
Was it like those dudes, like that kind of material?
Yeah, that
shiny
kind of
tar?
material. Yeah, but they dropped out of an airship, and it happened. And it wasn't a mission. It wasn't a main mission. It was like random suborder.
So you're saying almost like the Ganon arms in Tears of the Kingdom, where it's kind of like you're just randomly in the world and they just come at you.
But it only happened once, and I didn't. The people who I talked to didn't experience. Like I asked Dan.
Am I crazy?
Literally, I looked at Dan.
Is this real?
And I was like,
jet
hey,
lagged.
I was like, hey Dan, there was an airship that just flew over me, and it dropped a bunch of like tar men, and they attacked me. Did you see this? And Dan's like, no. What the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, all right, cool. There was a mission where I delivered a pizza, but I had to deliver at night to keep it cool.
Oh,
Or,
it was
sorry.
for Roger.
Pizza ingredients, I should say.
Oh, okay.
Because then the next mission, I delivered the pizza.
Any licensed food, snacks, drinks, Monster Energy drink?
I don't think I can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. That's pretty much all the stuff that I wanted to get out before the conversation with me, Skillup, and Dan.
This is crazy for you to be like, it's going to be really hard to beat this for Game of the Year if it continues on.
If it continues on this, I had such a good time. I recorded for Gregway today an hour long about daily diary that I made. Right, so like after every day of playing the game, I'll come back to my hotel and record about 10 to 15 minutes of me just talking about my day in Death Stranding 2, and then I stitched it together into a video, and that is up right now. As a Gregway, people want to check it out. But one of the things I talked about during that is how therapeutic this game was, where, you know, say what you want about like the action's better, right? It's more engaging, it's more fun, yada, yada, yada. One of the special things I think this game does, and Death Stranding 2 just enhances on, is the therapeutic feeling of just being in a world that is kind of serene and just being about walking from place to place, right? Like, it reminds me of playing Fallout and just like being in those in-between points of I'm just walking to Diamond City, or I'm playing Skyrim and I'm just like trying to get over this mountain or whatever. It's a game that is totally built around that experience, and legitimately, like, I felt rejuvenated. like I'm 25 hours into this game and I'm like, I don't want to stop playing this. I just want to play this game and relax, right? Like, I was kind of dreading this at first because I knew I wasn't going to get to take my save home. And I was like, I don't want to play 30 hours and then have to replay the 30 hours for the review. I am looking forward now to replaying those 30 hours and just living in Death Stranding 2. Like, I don't know how it kind of like opened up my heart in this way, but it legitimately was a transformative preview
that's the
experience.
highest praise I think you could give, is that you put 30 hours into a game and you're like, yeah, I'll do that all over again.
I'll do it so easily. Yeah, like I can't wait to get back to it.
And before we get to Skillup and Dan Ryckert and you, right after the word from our sponsors, I wanted to ask, how many times were there where you were talking to other journalists or other people at this event, other press, and you all had not experienced what the other had experienced?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think quite a bit. This open world feels a bit more like refined and inspired than Death Stranding 1's open world, right? Like, it feels like things could happen a bit more in the moment. Like I mentioned, the tar men dropping down from the dropship thing, right? Like, there are quite a few it feels a bit more, I don't want to say fuller because it's still an empty big world, right? But like it feels like things can happen a bit more in the moment. It feels like gameplay can be a bit more emergent this time around than in previous Death Strandings. And yeah, it's not like there are events happening left and right necessarily, but in talking to Dan and like hearing about how he played versus hearing about what SkillUp did in his time, we all sort of had our different stories about how we tackled certain things and the ways in which we were playing and the tools that we're using. I think that's one of the bigger things is like the amount of different tools they give you. I didn't even talk about the stat system. They have like a stat leveling up system that reminds me of Skyrim in the way that the more you do something, the more that shit gets leveled up, right? Like there's like a backpack patch system where you know how the Resident Evil has this inventory system where you have to arrange things based off like their shape or whatever. Your backpack, you can now put on like these patches onto your backpack that'll upgrade like your actual skill, or like I guess upgrade backpack shit, right? Like there was one patch I put on there that made my backpack lighter because it was like a weight patch or
like
whatever.
Talismans or whatever.
Yeah, like talismans. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. There's that. There's like a skill tree sort of system here as well. Just a lot of shit in here that will change the way each player tackles the game. And so in transitioning to the second half of this conversation, like I mentioned, talk to Dan and SkillUp. Between us, we probably have around 70 to 90 hours of playtime in this game. It was a really good conversation. We recorded this conversation early on the final day. So we didn't even finish our like time with the game yet. It is early on the final day. Shout out to PlayStation for giving us a place to record because we weren't allowed to record anywhere in Kojima Productions. And so in wanting to do this, like we asked somebody from PlayStation, they were like, oh yeah, the Sony offices are around the corner. So you're going to see like a PlayStation logo on the wall. That's because we're recording in like a meeting room in PlayStation, this conversation. And yeah, I even kicked out the PR person because awesome. I was like, hey, we want to make this like a private conversation between the three of us. And yeah, it was a really good conversation that I think you guys are really going to enjoy.
That's really darn cool. Well, I can't wait to hear all about you, Dan Ryckert, and SkillUp's experience with a whole bunch of hours of Death Stranding 2. And we'll get to that right after a word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Imperial. We've told you all how important it is to developers to wishlist games that you're interested in. So if this sounds cool to you, make sure you wishlist it. Imperial is a complex, feature-rich action RPG where you'll be sent to a planet in a far-off corner of the galaxy to explore an imposing monolith. As an elite mercenary, you'll join the expedition tasked with unearthing the secrets of the monolith and face off against the deadly automatons within. In Imperial, you'll explore 4 vastly different quadrants of the monolith, accessible only by using mysterious artifacts known as cartograms. Each cartogram affects which enemies, boss fights, and loot will appear when you enter the monolith, so no 2 excursions will be the same. Find even more cartograms to explore by looting defeated enemies or buy them from other players online at the trading post. Imperial features 3 weapon archetypes: the fast-paced acrobatic glaive, the defense-focused mace and shield, or the devastating cannon, with a range of customizable skills and abilities that can make short work of the awaiting automatons. Your weapons and abilities can be changed before any excursion into a cartogram, so if a loadout isn't working for you, you can mix things up to create the perfect playstyle. Help the members of the expedition in deep branching quests and aid other players in asynchronous multiplayer. Get ready, mercenaries. The monolith awaits. Imperial is available May 8th on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PS5. Wishlist now. It helps so much. Wishlist Imperial.
This episode is brought to you by Aura Frames. If you haven't called your mom in a while, here is your reminder to do it. But then you want to go above and beyond. Mother's Day is coming up, and I have the perfect gift idea. Aura Frames are incredibly smart and easy to use, allowing you to upload unlimited photos and videos directly from your phone to the frame. Plus, you can order the frame online and preload it with photos and videos using the Aura app, so it's ready to go right out of the box. It's a gift so special, they'll use it every day. Greg, Kevin, and a ton of people here at Kinda Funny are obsessed with their Aura frames. It takes about 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. So the next time you need to call your mom, you can also send her a new pic of you from that trip you're telling her all about. Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver matte frame. That's AURA frames.com, promo code Kinda Funny. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's super great that mental health awareness is growing, but there's still progress to be made. 26% of Americans who participated in a recent survey say they have avoided seeking mental health support due to fear of judgment. We can do better. No reason for fear. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience matching people with the right therapist from their diverse network of more than 30,000 licensed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Some of my best friends use BetterHelp and love how helpful it can be for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. We're all better with help. Visit BetterHelp.com/kindafunny to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/kindafunny. BetterHelp.com/kindafunny.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to Tokyo, Japan. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr., and I'm joined by the one and only Dan Ryckert.
Hello. How's it going?
Dude, it's going awesome. We're in Tokyo for a week.
It's been a week.
It's been a week.
Yes.
Yeah. We, of course, also have Ralph, a.k.a. Skill Up. Ralph, how's it going?
Dude, I wonder if this is actually my first time appearing on Kind of Funny.
I know we were talking about that.
I can't remember any other times.
Yeah.
I hope it's not the first time. I feel like I wish it wasn't. But
I think it is. Yeah.
But I'm glad it's
I mean, it's definitely not going to be the last time, of course. It's been such a fun Tokyo trip, right? We've been here for a week for probably the most unique preview opportunity that I've gotten to be a part of.
Oh, in terms of just sheer gameplay quantity, I mean,
Yeah.
they told us we're going to play like 30 hours of the game. And we are on the last day right now. And
Yep.
yeah, we're coming to, I'm on like 24 hours in-game timer right now.
Yep, Sam.
Insane. Yeah.
So there's so much to talk about, right? To set the stage a little bit, of course, we are here in Tokyo at Kojima Productions to play Death Stranding 2. We're not recording from Kojima Productions. We're recording from a remote location. But yeah, we played Death Stranding 2 for up to 30 hours is essentially the pitch to it. I think, yeah, I'm somewhere where Dan's at as far as over 20 hours at this point. Ralph, I don't know how long you've been playing or if you want to say.
I deliberately slowed myself down because I was like, I got to a point where I'm like, this is really good. I love it. I don't want to spoil any more for myself because I had to play through the whole thing, do the full review, and I wanted to keep this rest of the surprises in store for myself, if you know what I mean. So I have stopped at least before you guys. Well, I don't think they talked to you then because today I came in, I had the same idea where it's like, okay, today I'm just going to mess around with some systems. I'm going to build it. I'm going to fabricate every item, do a bunch of side stuff and see what that unlocks. And I was doing that. And somebody from Kojima Productions came up to me and they're like, oh, this is the last day, so if you just want to focus on the story. And I told him, I was like, well, hey, I was just going to run around and check out some combat stuff and everything. He's like, well, no, there is a specific story beat that we want you to get to.
Really?
It's over. So it's like, oh, okay. So I just went back, and now I'm just going to be lining out. We have several hours left to play, so I don't know what that story beat is, because we've seen a lot already. There's a lot of story beats that have happened.
So the reason why I wanted to have you guys here to record a conversation about Death Stranding 2 is it's the fact that, yeah, this is a unique preview opportunity. We're here in Tokyo. We played up to 30 hours of the game, right? For us, I think 20-something hours, and then Ralph said a little bit under. And this is one where there's so much to chew on and so much to talk about. And I figure one of the best ways to talk about it would be with other people that have actually played the game, because that's going to allow for the deepest dive possible, for Kind of Funny at the very least, right?
And it's a very fun one to discuss with people as these days have ended and we go back to the hotel and stuff and we're talking about it. And it keeps surprising me. Today, Blessing, you just kind of take your headphones off and you're like, hey, Dan, have you seen this spaceship that just flies by and a bunch of car animals fall out of it from the sky? I was like, what? Is this a story beat? No, it just happened. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
Exactly. So the plan for KF content is I want to do a traditional preview with the crew. We're going to do a your questions answered thing. I also have a Gregway project that I hope comes together in the way that I'm editing it, right? But this is what I want to kind of lead with, right, is a conversation with these guys. So getting into it, Death Stranding 2, let's start with Ralph. Ralph, how has your time been with the game so far?
I mean, I think for me personally, I come into Death Stranding 2 with a perspective that Death Stranding 1 was perfect, right? I fundamentally believe that. And I believe that from the very start. And I think there's been a huge kind of revision of that game, the way it's talked about over the years, where got a very mixed reception at launch. And then I think after that, people sat with a little bit. And I think now everyone realizes that, yeah, actually, that was a really fucking good video. There was a director's cut where it's myself being included. That's when we kind of came back and reevaluated.
Right.
Okay, removed from all the hype, removed from all the mystery of what is this game going to be?
come back and on its own terms play it. And I think a lot of people came around.
Yep, that's how it worked for me as well.
Right, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, so coming into Death Stranding 2 with that kind of love for the original, I was very much like, okay, so how are you going to change this up? I hope it doesn't change too much. But then at the same time, obviously, there are a bunch of people who do want this to evolve in some way and whatever else. So my kind of like high level takeaway after like 20 plus hours of play is that like, I think Death Stranding 1 was always perfect, but it took people a while to realize that. And I think Death Stranding 2 is the same, but it helps people realize why it's good much faster.
Oh, it gets into it because like the first one took so you had to establish so many things in that first game. Like, why are we eating these little bugs? Why are people crying? What is chiralium and all this stuff? And like the first one established all that.
Yeah.
So when this one starts, it is such a strong opening. I think everyone I've talked to agrees that like you're just getting to Sam's shelter where he's living with Lou, and it's playing this incredible Woodkid song, and it's just an incredible start to the game. Like there's not like some long 20-minute build up or anything like a lot of continuing games do.
Yep.
You're just kind of going right away. True. And it's less kind of like pain in the ass with the like leaning and falling down and stuff like that, which
Which is more forgiving on that front for sure.
yeah, so it's more immediately accessible than the first one.
Definitely agree. I think I think some people would have not enjoyed the pacing of the first game, thinking it's too slow or frustrating, whatever else. They definitely responded to that part of it in that this feels much more I would say, just a smoother onboarding, and the overall pacing of the game is definitely better for sure.
Yes.
If you wanted a game that was moving at a steadier clip and giving you better feedback more often, more cutscenes, whatever else, this is definitely delivering on that front. And I think that's definitely a thing that I've noticed.
Yeah, it's funny because it's almost very non-Kojima-like in that way of how quickly they get you into the game and how quickly they kind of onboard you. And I think for me, if I'm talking about my top level takeaway of Death Stranding 2, it feels like Death Stranding 1, except with all the feedback taken into consideration of what people might not have enjoyed as much in Death Stranding 1.
I think it's taking that feedback into account, and also what people did enjoy about like the Phantom Pain.
Yes.
There's a lot of Phantom Pain going on now.
That's an interesting point because I've heard a lot of people say that. Like that's definitely been a big discussion point. And I wonder so how do you come to that conclusion?
So the main thing that makes me think that is in the first game, I was very much I tailored my gameplay to avoiding combat encounters, or not even combat encounters, just enemy camps and stuff, because you were so discouraged from like you'd get guns and stuff, but it's like, well, if you kill that guy, you got to take his body to a lake or something like that, or an incinerator, and like there's a void out, and it's just like. So it very much frustrated me that like, okay, there's these enemy camps and stuff, but like I'm not great at stealth, and I'm not going to kill these guys, so I guess I'll try the bola gun or something. This one, it took a while for me to realize that like kind of all the weapons you get, without exception so far that I've seen, are non-lethal. It's like rubber bullets. But I mean, you're using them like an assault rifle. It's called assault rifle. You get a trank grenade launcher, so you're like shooting grenades that are like they'll make vehicles explode and everything. But like you can play it like an action game. So like now, if I see a bandit camp, I am looking forward to it because it's like, okay, I'm going to build a watchtower here. I'm going to spot everyone, or use Dollman, which we'll get to that. Dollman's my guy.
Dollman's awesome.
I'll tag all these dudes and everything, and I'll try the stealth thing. It's kind of like how I would play The Last of Us. So try stealth. I'd maybe get 1 or 2 kills, and then things would go to shit. And then it's like, all right, guns blazing. And you can do that in this one. And I don't feel like you could do that in the first one. And like the combat's really good in a Phantom Pain kind of way. And like all the feedback of like headshot and the slow-mo stuff.
I think that's for me the easy comparison when you want to talk about how Phantom Pain might influence this game is the combat feels like Phantom Pain light almost, right? Like I don't think it's as to the level of stealth and combat to Phantom Pain, but there is the feel of, all right, there's an enemy encampment, which in Death Stranding 1 you would avoid, right? It was way more about the enemy camps being an obstruction to what you're doing, right? As opposed to in Death Stranding 2, the enemy camps, it feels like all right, cool, we're gonna go in and take everybody out. It almost feels like a Far Cry. It almost feels like a Phantom Pain in that way.
And actually that leads to one of the more interesting things I've seen here is that an early on part of the game has a bandit camp that has a missable important cutscene that it seems like most people saw it and I did not see. And it sounds like you go into this bandit camp and there's a bunch of these like red like ninja guys, including everyone's describing it to me. I haven't even seen this yet. It just sounds like Gray Fox killing people.
And basically Gray Fox killing.
And I would like that's like one of my favorite scenes of all time in the first one when you walk in, you see the bloody hallway and all that stuff. And I missed it because I was so accustomed in the first game, like, oh, it's a bandit camp. I'm going to like set my markers around this and then go across the river. So I didn't see it, and I was asking Kojima Productions people, and they're like, "Oh no, if you got past them, you didn't see it. Like you can't." So this awesome like ninja guy. I'm 30 hours in almost. I haven't seen this guy yet.
Ralph, what's your take on the?
I mean, I think because I know a lot of people are talking about this, and I know a lot of people will talk about this in the coverage, and I think that I would I would hate for anyone to kind of walk away from a preview and be like, oh, so Death Stranding 2 is basically like Phantom Pain 2. And it's like, it's definitely not.
No.
Like, I think that fundamentally, this is still a game about delivering packages, right? It's still a game about you and the open expanse, and it's quiet and pensive, and that's the vibe of it. But I think in addition to that, there's now this very optional combat layer. Most of the time it's optional. And even when you are forced to engage in that combat, it's very surface level combat. You know, like we did this boss encounter at one point, which again, won't spoil. Incredible visuals. Like, holy fucking shit. It is like basically impossible this thing runs this well on a PS5. The Decima engine is like straight up black magic.
Yes.
It should be illegal.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing to note is we played this on base PS5s, and I've seen some of the best looking shit I've ever seen.
The amount of stuff in this sequence you're talking about, the amount of stuff going on, and when you play it, folks, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. It's just like, oh, how is this possible?
Yeah, I totally agree. But the point I was making is that like it looks incredible, but from a gameplay perspective, super simple. It's just like, you know, just pop out a color, but that's the whole thing, right? And I think that is still the core of this experience, where, as in exploring, moving from place to place, delivering parcels. This is still Death Stranding, right? But now you just have this other stuff where you can do a little bit of lightweight, very flashy, very like impressive looking combat. Definitely not about that, I think, and I that's kind of where I'm. That's what I want to.
That's where you diverge from the Metal Gear Solid 5
comparison. I think those comparisons, I think, are going to lead people astray because they're going to hear so much about Metal Gear and they think, "Oh, cool, this is Metal Gear."
It's not.
It does give me a bit of the same thing where it's like in Phantom Pain, you would get stuff like, "Oh, the rocket fist thing." It's like, "All right, I'm going to go try this thing out."
Yes.
And now it's like, "Oh, Sam, here's the blood boomerang, and you put your own blood into a boomerang that can kill BTs."
Yep.
And that's the thing with like BTs is in the first one, there were so many elements of the first one that were like almost intentionally a pain in the ass, from like BTs and having to like, you know, hold your breath and the baby and stuff like that. And you can still do that if you want to sneak through, but also you can just go in there, blood boomerang or a blood grenade and just fuck them up. And it, you know, it doesn't, you can play like that.
I think that's where, because I understand where both Ralph and Dan and like everybody comes from as far as where they land on the Phantom Pain thing. I think I swing towards Ralph when you're talking about like the level of combat versus how much of the game is still about walking and still about delivering. But then I think there is a sandbox nature of Death Stranding 2 that is expanded upon that does once again remind me of like the sandbox nature of Phantom Pain. And my hot take coming out of this, and I wrote this right before we left Kojima Productions to come do this, right, is like, I think there are parts of this open world that are just way better than Phantom Pain's open world as far as what they're doing, as far as like the emergent nature of it. Like so again, we're here for 4 days of playing this game. Day 1 and 2 for me and my gameplay, and I think for our gameplay as well, right? I spent so much of that time just doing like story stuff and seeing like, all right, where's the story going to take me? How far can I get in this thing? All day yesterday, right? All day on day 3 of playing this, I just spent my time in the sandbox, like just delivering, doing the sub orders, doing like side quests, hanging out in the world. And I don't want people to think that I'm saying that this is Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring, but like to Dane's thing of what you mentioned earlier of I take off my headphones at one point today, and I look at you and I'm like, yo, have you seen this?
Yeah.
And you're like, and I explained it to you and you're like, is that tied to a story mission? I'm like, no. Yeah. It's just a thing that happened.
You killed me. We were in dinner last night and you told me this anecdote that I'm still thinking about. And it's that a good chunk of this game, most of what we played is set in Australia. And there you go. And so
there's so much to set the stage of what's going on in this training too, which we should do in a second. But yeah, go for it.
So you're in Australia and there's an animal shelter and there's like, you know, nice animals around this world and everything that you can like, Sam can go up to them and like button prompt, put them in a little thing and like take them to the animal shelter and they can live their lives peacefully. And the way I think most people have been doing it is sneaking up and being, hey buddy, get in this little box. I'll take you home. You didn't know that was possible.
I didn't know you could do it like that because I think I thought I was close enough and I wasn't close enough to get the button prompt. But I was like, all right, I know I'm supposed to be rescuing the animals. How am I? There's a kangaroo right there.
Exactly what this story is.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a kangaroo right there. How do I save this kangaroo? And so I bust out my assault rifle and I
save an animal.
Yeah, and I got. You know, here's the thing, right? It's not cruelty because these aren't real bullets. As a reminder,
probably hurts.
It's all rubber bullets in this game that knock people out. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to knock out the kangaroo with my rubber bullets and save it. And that's exactly what happened. That kangaroo is saved.
I have heard, I don't know if this is true, but someone did tell me that the kangaroo can punch you.
Oh, awesome.
Really?
I heard that from someone else. So I'm not sure if they were having a joke with me, like, let's tell the Australian this thing. But they seem serious. That's
fucking awesome.
It's funny. And in telling all these stories, like I ran into something I haven't heard anyone else see. We're like Doll Man. You saw him in the trailer. He's a puppet, and he's my guy. Every time I go back to my private room, I'm talking to the Doll Man. There's dance sequences. There's all sorts of stuff going on with him. But at one point, he stays on your belt like Mimir in God of War. And I'm approaching a river, and he is like mid-sentence explaining to me that like, oh, hey, Sam, when, there rains, sometimes these rivers will flood. But like mid-sentence, I'm walking into the river, and I'm like, oh, it's not too deep. I can go across here. But he's waist level. And as soon as the water got to that point, Dollman's voice was like, yeah, Sam, if you just... yeah. Like, I got out of the river's mouth. Like, so wow, they thought, like, that's the Kojima of magic, right?
Yes.
Thinking of these very specific things.
So, like, in preparing for this conversation, right, like, I was taking notes about, like, okay, how do I ultimately feel about coming out of this game, right? And I think I come back to the MGS5 thing a little bit of, like, I think this is more Death Stranding, filtered through some of that quality, depth, and fun that you got from Fane and Pain, but even more so, right, like, it comes back to directly answering the criticisms and then also the things people love about Death Stranding 1. And so when I go through my notes, right, the combat is fun and engaging. The game gets you into the gameplay quicker. There's more dynamic weather and obstacles, which we got to talk about, right? There's more tools and upgrade systems. The story feels easier to follow and more interesting, in my opinion. The game is more beautiful. It's like a PS5 thing, right? Like the Decima engine is on another level, and we got to talk about that as well. The game feels bigger. The soundtrack, better. There's more variety in the BTs and the ways to deal with them. There's a glossary system that is akin to active time lore from Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, like Avowed had that recently.
Yeah, Avowed had that as well. And for me, this game ultimately feels like the potential fulfillment of the promise of Death Stranding 1.
Yeah, it took me, a year or so to come around on Death Stranding 1. If this had been what the first game had been like, I would have been like all in the way I am with like Metal Gear.
Yes.
Because like this one is just so improved in every way.
And Ralph, like, do you feel the same way as somebody who's super into Death Stranding?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting point because I think, I think that's kind of, maybe that comes back to what I said at the start, which is that like, I think I felt like the promise of Death Stranding 1 was achieved in Death Stranding 1.
Yeah.
And so I think to sort of frame it as like, 2 finally delivers on that. I wouldn't agree with in that way. For me personally, it's just like, I think it enlarges the sandbox. It creates more potential, more opportunities, more choice for sure. But I still think the core of that promise is the same. Like, I think there's just something quiet and beautiful about this kind of experience that remains unchanged, despite how much more stuff sits around it. So, and I guess that's exactly what I said at the start. Like, I think that there was a brilliance to the core formula, and this just helps people get to that point where they can connect with it.
Yes.
You either connected with the first game or you didn't. You connected with it fast or slow, whatever. But yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely. 2 gives so many more people a chance to sort of just like create a real connection to this type of experience.
There's a note I took in here, and of course I did physical notes because they wouldn't allow us to have phones or laptops at the game station. If we go to the relaxation area, then we can get our phones out. But I have just pages and pages of physical notes. But one of my notes is about the buy-in of Death Stranding 1. Like, you can tell in playing this game how much this crew does believe in Death Stranding 1 because everything is based. One of the things, because one of the notes I had here is that the story is easier to get into, right? And I think that's not because this game is less weird. It's because it plays by the rules they set in the first game. Yeah. And there is such a belief in that world. There's such a belief in like the ethos and the timefall in BTs and the UCA and the chiral network and all of those principles that are introduced that to us at the time were so bizarre. This game treats it as so normal that I, as a player who's played Death Stranding 1, the way that I jump into this world now and get introduced to these story beats, I'm like, early on, Dan, one of the things you keep bringing up is the chiral printer.
yeah. Like one of the, like when you first get to your little shelter and you meet with Fragile, and you got Lou running around, and Fragile's like, "Oh, I brought you the best chiral printed diapers." And like, I feel like in the first one, what is this? This is crazy. This one's like, "Oh yeah, okay, I know."
Do you guys think that someone who hasn't played Death Stranding 1 is going to struggle to get into 2, given how much assumed knowledge there is?
It's hard because there is a like Death Stranding recap on the main menu, but it's like 17 slides of like.
It won't be.
So it's not good that I watched that and because it talks about the plot of Death Stranding rather than talking about the world of Death Stranding, and the plot almost doesn't really matter in Death Stranding as much as all this weird stuff. And you can't get that across in a recap video.
Yeah. Well, I did go back after the first night and I watched like a 20-minute recap video. It was just like, if you want to, if the like delivery stuff and the things in the first one that drove some people away, bother you, I'd say, try a recap video and jump in, because like the gameplay itself is just so good here.
Yeah.
I personally do think that people will struggle to really get to slip into this if they haven't played the first one, because I think there is a lot of assumed knowledge and characters and mechanics and just, that world design stuff, world building. It's just, it really does assume that you know what it is. Like, the codex, sure. And there is that recap video, but I'm going to guess that people who haven't played the first one are going to find this quite.
I think people who haven't played the first one, they're going to feel the way that the people who did play the first one felt upon playing that game. Because I do think that one of the, I think, good things about Kojima's writing and the bad things about Kojima's writing is that him and his writing team have this tendency to over-explain things.
Absolutely.
And like they still do that in this game, where it is like, any concept you can think of, right? They're going to find ways to repeat themselves. And I think for us coming into this world, it's like, cool, we know what this is. I already know what the chiral network is, right? Like, but in Death Stranding 1, I think we had that anyway, right? I think we had those feelings of like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Yeah, with this world. Ralph, we're in Australia in this game. We're connecting.
Funny story though. I was having lunch with like the British contingent here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of them was like, it would be really funny if they had like Death Stranding 3 Australia edition, like wouldn't it be? Because we're like, the Australian landscape actually would be perfect for a Death Stranding game. It's big, expansive and whatever, not much out there in the middle of Australia. And that was just a joke that one of the British guys made. It was Andy from VGZ actually.
Yeah.
And then literally an hour later, we're sitting there and they're like, we're headed to Australia. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
Yes.
But yeah, it is. The game is set in large part in Australia. We're not sure. So you start in New Mexico. Start in Mexico. And then we won't spoil how you get to Australia, but you somehow get to Australia. And from what I can tell, it seems like the rest of the game seems to be there. It's unclear if there are other locations after that.
So I today went to that Codex thing, and there's like the story so far.
Yeah.
I just, it's our last day here, and I just want to make sure I understand all the beats of the story.
Yeah.
And where I'm at now is like, okay, you're working your way across Australia, and once you get to the end, there's another plate gate that will take you to another continent.
Interesting.
So
I have heard that, but then I wasn't sure if they actually are going to.
Like, is that going to be another big map like Australia, or is that just a story thing?
Yeah, I don't know. It would be cool to imagine, because one of the big themes here, I think, the first game was Connect America.
Yeah.
This second game is Connect the World.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, it just seems to be Connect Australia. And I'm not sure if there's a broader goal that this is a trilogy or something. And then, part 3 takes us to, I don't know, the rest of the world or whatever. I don't know. But right now, it does seem like you're going to be spending a good chunk of the game in Australia, because now we're like, 20, 25 hours?
Yeah.
I feel like we've done about a quarter of the Australian map, maybe a third.
I'm getting about a third.
About a third, yeah.
And, I mean, like the Mexico part is like, I've heard some people say like, Mexico's like the tutorial, but like,
yeah,
it feels like you are playing the game. It doesn't feel like it's like 5-6 hours of like, here's how to use this. Or
yeah.
So like, I would say 5 or 6 hours in Mexico, and then a big chunk
of Australia.
Yeah. So, it's a very surprising location. It makes sense from a George Miller perspective. Oh, yeah. This is a way for Kojima to get closer to George Miller, I guess.
Yeah.
George Miller obviously stars in this game as a character, but he's not voiced by George Miller. He's voiced by a different voice.
It's like the Guillermo del Toro.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because, they're not trying to deliver a realistic representation of the Australian environment. There are certain parts of the landscape that I look at. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Australia for sure. Like the terrain, color of it, the trees, absolutely. But then there's parts that are not at all. And that's fine because, again, like America did not look like Iceland. You know what I mean? Like they just went for a thing. So it is a common. They actually described it in an interview as they said they were looking to portray primordial Australia. That was like their vibe. That was what they were going for. And I think they're trying to distill it down to its essence. And then they're trying to put like their own Death Stranding spin on it because it is Australia in the post-apocalypse.
Yeah,
there is actually a big fucking ice-capped mountain in the center of Australia, which is literally the opposite of what's in the center.
I was looking at the map. I was like, does Australia really look like this?
I've never been there, but I was pretty icy mountains.
The level designer, because we were like, it was all us, and it was myself was there. They knew I was from Australia. During the interview, they paused at one point and they said, I'm sorry for putting an ice cap in the middle of Australia. Like
that's so funny.
And I'm like, apology accepted. It's fine. No hard feelings.
It's like the first game, going through the Midwest. It's like, I grew up in Kansas. It didn't look like this at all.
But it is interesting. Yeah, and they do have, so I don't know how much, I'm conscious of time, but I do want to say, as I was playing through it, I was listening to the dialogue. And first of all, it is voiced by Australians. And you can tell, right? Secondly, I could tell it was written by an Australian because there were very subtle words that you just don't know exist unless you're Australian. Like there's one word that's like Buckley's, and you'd say, oh, he's got Buckley's chance of doing that. Now that's an old phrase that my freaking parents used. Do you know what I mean? But when I heard them use that phrase in this, I'm like, okay, an Australian 100% wrote this dialogue. Sure enough, we later on met someone, an Australian bloke, and I'm like, oh, yeah, mate, he works at Kojima Production. What do you do here? He's like, oh, I'm the lead localizer for this game. So the lead localizer who was with Kojima in all the recording sessions and helping and like basically wrote a lot of the dialogue in terms of like making sure it sounds authentic or whatever else. He's an Australian bloke, 34 years old or whatever else. And he's just done such fantastic work here. It's so authentic and subtle. It doesn't sound like it's playing up to Australian stereotypes. It's not like fucking, what's his name? Junkrat from Overwatch or whatever. It's authentic kind of voice and tone. And yeah, it's great so far. I really like the world.
Yeah. Let's talk about story. Of course, we don't want to spoil things. We don't want to get too deep into it, but I will say this time around, and I mean, last time I liked the characters as well, but this time there's something about the cast of characters that's really working with me. It reminds me of like vintage Kojima almost, where like in Metal Gear, oftentimes you had such a strong cast. Everybody had their own story. Everybody had their own in-depth, like, oh, this is this person's thing, and it's really cool. And Death Stranding 1 had that, but there's something about how they're tackling it in Death Stranding 2 that's working for me.
I think a lot of it for me is, in the first one, it all kind of felt siloed, like the character interactions, where it's like, okay, in my room, I'm talking Fragile. I'll go to Hartman's place, I'm talking to Hartman. And here you're on board this, the DMB Magellan.
Yes.
Like it's the thing that looks like
you're part of this organization called Drawbridge, which is Fragile's new organization.
Yeah, and you're kind of like assembling a team. So like Tarman's the pilot, and Fragile's there, and you meet, other characters and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a weird comparison, but it makes me think of like, remember Arrested Development had that 4th season where they couldn't get anyone in the same room before, and it's just like, okay, well, here's just Job talking to Michael, and here's this. Okay. That's what the first one feels like to me. Yeah. This one feels like, oh, when the whole cast was together, and it's like there's actual interactions between them on the bridge and stuff.
I agree, and I do agree with that. I also think that a byproduct of that is that main character Sam, forget what's the actor's name?
Norman Reedus.
Kind of mind blank then. He feels much more distant in this game, kind of absent, in a weird way. Like it really feels like he's not saying a lot. He's like half a step up from a silent protagonist. And I feel like
Keeper Snake.
Say again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I kind of wish he was a little bit more present in what was going on. But maybe that's because we're at a phase where they're introducing new characters and they're setting up those characters.
There's some little like fun vignettes. So I just saw one today where there's he sings a little song and stuff like that. Like some little like,
okay, I didn't see that.
Stuff like that. Okay. So and the new characters are really like I said, Dollman is just
Dollman is so bizarre. He's almost kind of like a Mimir from God of War in the sense that like he's kind of hanging out with you the whole time.
Yeah, he's not like ruining puzzles and stuff like Mimir.
No, that's the thing is he's not as talkative as Mimir, which might be a good thing, but like he does talk if you want him to talk, right? Like
you go to the private room, you always have the exclamation point, like, oh, he's got something new to say. And
exactly.
Every time, my favorite thing with him was he's like, oh, Sam, you're probably okay. Let me back up. There's another character named Rainy, and she is a woman that part of her deal is when she's outside, rain all of a sudden starts falling, and it's timefall rain, so it makes everything ache. But for a 1.5 meter radius around her body, it makes it core fall, which makes things younger. And so one time I'm just talking to Dollman in the private room. He's like, Sam, you're probably wondering how I maintain my youthful appearance. Well, sometimes Rainy takes me in the shower with her, and the core fall makes it like, oh my God, this puppet's taking showers with this Japanese model, and it keeps me young. It's like, this is a good video game.
one of the notes.
You Kojima, change.
One of the during day one of playing this game, right? Like a lot of my notes were like, oh man, I feel like this game is a bit more tame compared to what I feel like I was expecting. And then toward the end of the day, I wrote down Kojima's on his bullshit. Like I finally
the most.
Like I reached a point where I was like, oh, Kojima's on his bullshit. Like there's another point where a character says the sentence, someone doesn't like shoes, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to explain it more. I'm not going to dive deeper into that. Oh, dude, yeah. Like, it was one of those things where I was like, Kojima, like, you're such a genius, but also you're such a sicko sometimes. But yeah, like, I really like this cast of characters, and yeah, you're right. I think having them, for the most part, be a part of Drawbridge and be this thing of, like, I'm assembling a team sort of thing, I think really works in its favor to get those dynamics between characters. But then also, like, the characters that you know and love are in their bag. Like, Troy Baker is still killing it as his character.
One next scene that we all saw, and that was
really
good.
I agree with that.
And we've already seen, like, teases of other characters in the trailer, like Neil, and I'm very intrigued by whatever's going on with Neil. So, like,
Yes.
that's a highlight for me so far.
Oh my gosh.
Much, but like,
I think that's like the highlight for everybody. Of like, there's a scene where they introduce Neil, right, and
there's
it's
a whole
like
kind of sequence.
Yes.
Side of that boss fight we hinted at.
and everybody united is like, oh, this is the coolest part of the game.
It's
so
one
far.
of the coolest things I've ever seen in the video game.
Yeah, it's up there for real.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
And then one more thing I wanted to mention too is like the real-time weather stuff. I think that stuff is really cool and really impressive, and it adds like such an interesting layer to the game where as you're going, like there's these things, there's these earthquakes. They have a special name for them. Gatequakes.
Yes.
Thank you. They're just like these earthquakes that happen all the time, right? But like that, well, I was gonna say shake things up, but literally shake things up. Yeah. But like the first time it happened, I think this is just like a set sequence. I don't know if this happens more, or maybe you guys can fill me in. The first time you get a gatequake, the world shook, and then I saw geometry in the world like fall away on a mountain.
Yeah. So that. Oh, I think we have to also say the opening of this game, maybe one of the best openings I've ever played.
It really,
Really good. Really good.
Well, and that's when I saw the Gatequake. After that, I didn't see it mess with geometry as much. Just kind of feels like the world shakes a bit, and if you've got lots of packages on your back, you're probably going to topple over.
Yeah, exactly. So like, there's that. There is of course the Timefall makes a return with the rain and stuff. But with that, there's also rising tides and rivers.
Yeah.
And so you have like this real time, like, oh man, the world is going to kind of form and shape around the weather stuff going on. You have sandstorms that happen, and like, well, that was one of the questions I asked the production team was about the real time weather, and they kind of just talked about it as a way to like have this additional sort of obstacle as they're delivering packages, right? But like, one of the things they mentioned was kind of how these things converge together when you are delivering a package and you're going up a hill and there's an earthquake, right? Or you're trying to plan a route, but then you see a sandstorm looming in the distance and like having to plan around that kind of stuff. It's really interesting.
Like, weather forecast stuff. There's a skill tree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a couple things here. There's a skill tree, or you're, and it's very easy to like. I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn on a bunch of combat ones for a combat encounter, and like respec on the fly very easily.
Yeah.
But there's also like an Oblivion style, like Sam's skills part on the menu where it's like as you do stuff, it's like, oh, your carrying capacity has gone up. Your resistance to this has gone up. Your endurance, your mastery of shotguns, like just as you're doing stuff, we're leveling it up.
I mean, this is one of, if not maybe the most, I guess, detailed Kojima game, or maybe detailed or in-depth, right? Like there's so much going on in terms of the systems is what I'm trying to say.
There's a part where it's like every time you go back to your private room and you like shower and stuff, it gives you little things like Sam's sunburn has healed.
Yeah.
And it's like at no point they don't say anything about that outside of that. And you just know they have something, some little minute thing where it's like, oh, your stamina recharge is 0.05% slower if you're sunburned.
You talking to me about the whole this is a sequel thing.
Yes, that was
that was really good.
I mean, well, I think one of the things that for me stands out is the fact that you look at Kojima's gameography, and most of his like main titles, the Metal Gear games, right, but have been big innovations between titles. The MGS1 to MGS2 is a big jump. You have a new main character, it feels different, right? MGS2 to MGS3, you're in a completely different setting, different character again, right? To MGS4, different game. MGS5, completely different game. This is really the first time, at least on this scale, that Kojima's made a direct sequel that is very much like, no, it's just a sequel. Like it is building off of the world and systems of the previous game in a way that's not redefining things. Yeah. And I think seeing Kojima have the opportunity to do that has allowed for a lot with this game, right? Like it goes back to the kind of the points we were making in the beginning as far as this feeling like this feeling reverent in what Death Stranding 1 did, but also expanding it out, right? How do we make this deeper? How do we make the world bigger? How do we make the world more interesting to navigate and all that stuff? And it's very fascinating to see him operate in this way, because for a while there, I was waiting on a big twist. I was waiting on the, all right, where's Raiden? like, like when are you going to, kill off Norman Reedus in the first hour or whatever? Yeah, like, oh, we're connecting space now, right? And it's not, it's a sequel.
I'm still open, because they said even if we played the full 30 hours of this beeline story, that we'd see 30 to 40% of the game.
That's what they said.
Yes. So I'm holding off because I'm still curious about this Neil character and stuff, and there's just a lot of stuff I saw in that.
That's true.
We haven't even touched on some of this stuff yet, and we're deep into.
I think would be highly unusual for Kojima to not throw us some massive fucking curve.
Yeah.
And I think right now we've got a really brilliant expansion of the original premise that I think is just fantastic. But yeah, you're right. There has to be that little thing where Kojima's like, got you.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
lives for that. So
I don't want to take too much of your guys' time because I know there's more to go. There's more to play. We can go back and play more of the game right now. And of course, I still have so much. I there have pages of notes I haven't touched here, and we're gonna make more content about Death Stranding too. But before we get out of here, is there anything else you guys want to mention as like last words?
I was just thinking about how we were talking about like the sunburn and all the little like systems on systems and stuff. It really reminds me of a thing that blew me away back in the day of Metal Gear Solid 2 is there's just a part where there's a bar on the tanker and like there's an ice bucket thing. If you shoot the ice bucket, it scatters everywhere and ice falls all over the bar. And I remember reading that and watching this, that the ice that is by itself will melt faster than ice cubes that are closer to each other because of, there's, I don't know, ice science. But, I feel like this has a million versions of that. Where it's just like, I can't believe they thought of this. I can't believe they thought of that. Like everything is considered. Things like, the Dollman voice when he goes underwater. Just like, it seems, there's no other team doing things to that level, that much minute detail. It's a delight.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can just tell the amount of work, because obviously they had a foundation in one. I think another thing that we kind of forget is they built their studio at the same time as they were building one. And they did it in like 4 years, which is just like unbelievable that they managed to pull that off. Now they have a studio, they got a nice new office, they've got a larger team, and they've got a foundation. And so that allows them to just like build on that. And the work that they've done here to sort of deepen that, the attention to detail they bring, the quality bar, like wait till you see how this game looks.
Oh my God.
It's unbelievable.
Legitimately, like
The base PS5.
It's just,
we're playing on a base PS5. There's something I don't understand about how good this game looks, where you will see mountains in the background and they look so fucking detailed.
Yeah.
You can see all the ridges, you can see all facial capture in this game is insane too. Like there's still so much to talk about. Of course, you guys are going to talk about it on your channels. We're going to talk about it here at Kind of Funny. I think for me, like one of the last things I want to mention is I'm with Ralph, right? Of like, I think Death Stranding 1 is a phenomenal game. There's something about just the ease of being in the world of Death Stranding 2. And I would almost have to go back to Death Stranding 1 to compare and contrast. Maybe it's the fact that I'm already used to being in this world. Maybe it's the fact that I already know the rules of it or whatever. But we're 20 something hours into the preview here at this preview event. I know I'm not going to be able to keep my save.
No.
I know I'm not going to be able to. Yeah, I know I'm not going to be able to keep that progress.
Yeah.
But I don't want to stop playing.
No, I will do this all again.
Yes, like I want to keep being in this world. There's something special about my game time yesterday where I said, fuck it, I'm doing any more story stuff. And I just existed in the world and delivered packages. And it's such an easy world to be in.
I spent 8 hours building roads yesterday.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That was incredible. I loved it.
I was doing combat stuff, and even then I was finding stuff that it doesn't teach you, where it's like, I don't know if it's like you get a skeleton thing, that helps you carry stuff. I think it's tied to this, but like I jumped and I noticed a quick prompt. It's like X to double jump. I was like, what? I can just double jump in this?
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And then in combat, I did one where I jumped and I leveled up. So now I can do a straight up drop kick. But before I can do 2 different wrestling moves. I can do a cross body block or a Kenny Omega V trigger. So I'm just running around the beach. You're going to start V triggering kangaroos, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I got to save them, though. I got to do what I got to do to save these kangaroos. Guys, thank you so much for joining me and talking about Death Stranding 2. It's been such a wonderful conversation talking to you guys who've played the preview alongside me. I know when I'm explaining it to Andy and Greg and everybody at KF, I'm going to look like a madman.
We've been in the trenches together with this.
Oh, my.
We've been through something.
Again, such a bizarre preview event, but also very cool.
Yeah.
Like one of the coolest opportunities to play up to 30 hours at Kojima Productions. But we're going to head back. We're going to play more, and also we're going to interview Kojima himself. And so look forward to more content from Skill Up on the Skill Up YouTube channel. On Dan, where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
Fire Escapecast, Twitch, Blue Sky, all the usuals.
Wrestling events.
Yeah, you'll find me. Yeah, you'll find me there. Yep.
Exactly. Of course, you can keep it locked right here to Kind of Funny for more content about Death Stranding 2 and all your favorite video games. I don't know where we're putting this. It might be half a Gamescast. It might be a full Gamescast. Either way, patreon.com/kindoffunny to keep supporting the brand. And until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.